What's up YouTube, and welcome back to another Procreate tutorial where today we're going to go ahead and create a sun design. So as always, there's links to everything you're going to need in the description down below. Tap on the description, hit the link that takes you over to my Patreon, and you'll grab all of the requirements from there, the palette, and then everything else is built into Procreate, and of course the canvas size as well. While you're over there, check out my Patreon, because that's where I post 3 exclusive tutorials every single month to my Patreon supporters. There's a catalogue now of over 140 exclusive tutorials that are not here on YouTube. They're only available on Patreon. So make sure to check that out using the link in the description down below. Enjoy today's tutorial and let's get started. So once you've created your canvas, the first thing you're going to want to go ahead and do is go to your brush. You can go to calligraphy and the monoline brush. And you want to grab the color top left of the palette and then draw a circle in the middle of the screen. Now hold your pen down at the end and then pop one finger on the screen. Just make it a little bit larger than we need. And then drag and drop your color in. And then go to your cursor. Make sure you've got uniform, for example, selected, and you can go ahead and change this to 856. Just roughly, that's going to be about the size that we want. And if you make sure snapping here in the bottom left is turned on, you can move this into the center. You'll get an orange line both vertically and horizontally, which lets you know you're nice and central to the actual canvas itself. Now from there, we can go ahead and swipe this to the left and duplicate it. The bottom one out the two. Go to your colors. Grab the color here. It's the top of the second column. I'll just call it the second color. And then we'll go back to the layer here and drag and drop it in. Now we'll leave that temporarily as it is. We're going to go to our background color and change it to the color in the bottom right of the palette and then hit done. And then that layer that we just created, being the orange circle, you want to go to your adjustments, Gaussian blur, and swipe from left to right till we get a nice big glow. Now I reckon around about 40% should do the trick there. So I'm going to go about around that mark, 39%, swiping from left to right, and that gives you your glow. Now that's just there so we can see our planet, or our sun, should I say, later on. Let's go ahead and just work on the background quickly. So let's create a new layer and drag it underneath that glow. We'll go to our colors. I'm going to grab the top of the second column from the right. My brush wants to be elements, and we're going to use the clouds brush. Size-wise, I reckon we can go a little bit larger. We can go up to about 67%. In fact, that's probably a little bit too big. I reckon around about 45. And then we can just very, 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 very lightly go around the outside. In fact, I'll drop it down to that marker of 33%. And I'm just trying to add in the tiniest amount of like blue color tone in the background, randomly patched as well. Like don't let it be too perfect in any way or too circular or anything like that. And keep the pressure nice and light. It's so subtle on my screen. Apologies for all the marks anyway, because it's such a dark design today. So you should be able to see like a little bit of blue in the top right there, a little bit in the bottom left. It's really, really meant to be quite subtle. You can always add more later on, but again, if you can keep it to a minimum, that'd be great. And then let's go ahead and create another new layer. Let's set the blend mode from normal to the option of add. And while we're here, let's swipe from left to right on both of those and group them together and rename the group and just call it BG for background. Then that new layer here that we created, let's go ahead and let's set our brush size a little bit smaller. Let's go down to the 6% just to start with. That might be a little bit too small, a tad bigger. And we're just going to lightly down here, just try and create like a little bit of a nebula. So really kind of light with your pressure and just creating like a bit of like a forked almost design. I've gone down to 6% there, just so I can be a bit more particular with my little addition there. And I'm going to lightly patch in throughout the background area little patches of additional bits of color, which is where you can make that look a little bit more vibrant now in comparison to what it was before. So I'm just very, very lightly with my pressure, just wiggling in here to create super light bits of color variation in the background. And again, I don't want to do it absolutely everywhere, but if I can introduce one at the top as well, that will look quite cool. Now I might actually set the brush size to like a 3% just quickly and try and just add in a bit more glow to the center of it while I've got this particular layer. Maybe a little random patch here and there in some of the smaller ones. Lovely. Let's then go ahead and create another new layer. Change the blend mode from normal to add as well. And then we can go ahead and go to our colors. We can grab the purple now, so the middle of that same column. I think the size probably wants to be about 3 or 6%. You just want to sort of wiggle your way through that nebula. So definitely 3 for me. And just create like a sort of main line or road almost, if you want to call it, just running through it that's a little bit brighter and a bit more vibrant. You know, you can add in random little patches of it, so it's not in like a line as such. It can be separated and kind of broken up in that sky. We'll add in a little bit more across the top there. That's quite cool. Over here, I don't want to do every single corner, so I'm tempted to kind of leave a little bit where possible. I will leave them. I want this one here to be a bit more vibrant than the rest, just because then it's nice and random compared. Now with that, I could probably also go ahead and set it about 14% and then occasionally, extremely lightly, again, about 13%, just tap in some of those blue areas, just to add in the very, very minor amount of hue change. So it's a little bit purpley as well. Now we'll also go ahead and go to our colors and grab the bottom of the same column. Definitely want that brush size about 3%. And then in that purple now, and in your kind of main avenue, definitely going to go smaller. In fact, I'll get rid of the 3% mark and we'll go down even smaller, about 2% now. I'm going to tap and sort of create a bit more of a dragged out situation here, like a little bit longer and a little bit more emphasis on creating a bit more kind of detail in here. And then you can go even smaller than that. You can go down to like a 1% and in there, brighten it up. So what we'll do is we'll create another new layer, change the blend mode from normal to add. And then in that area here now, we can afford to go even brighter with our color and create lovely variations in there, like wiggly lines that are a little bit more crispy, like so. And you can let that kind of run off all the way at the end kind of thing. Just a little kind of break in the sky, which will look so cool. Add in a little bit of interest to what will ultimately just be a bit of a dark spot otherwise. So a little something like that. And then you can make your way back through some of the other areas as well. You know, you can get to a 1 to 2% in them, varying my pressure as I'm making my way through them. Little sort of specks. I urge you to potentially drop the opacity like I've just done to about 41%. And then you can just build up really lightly and just take your time to just create levels of miniature amount of interest in the sky. It's just a little bit of sort of detail here and there that can just add quite a lot and just fill out the scene as well. So I'm gonna go back up to about a 2% brush size. Just run in a little bit of color in these ones up the top. Again, I want one to be a little bit brighter, but the rest can be nice and kind of empty. Now, one thing that always makes a kind of space scene look great is stars, of course. So we'll create a new layer. We'll go to our colors. We'll double tap in the top left to select white, and we'll go to our brush. You can go to the option of calligraphy. And if you tap on the monoline brush, if you change your spacing to max under stroke path and hit done, you can then quite comfortably, with the brush size set to 1, just tap without fear of creating a drag, like a line. So what I want you to do is just fill out the entirety of your sky and create little clusters here and there potentially, and just ultimately giving ourselves a really nice amount of stars. Now, I love a space scene when the stars are absolutely packed in there and they're all of different scales and sizes. So what we'll do is we'll make this the kind of largest size in here. And then in a minute, we're just going to duplicate this as we normally do in a space scene like this. I'm going to put some in here as well, even though I can't see them. I'm just going to chuck a few in there up towards the top, like so. And there we go. I think we're good to go. Now, just before we carry on, just go back to your monoline brush, swipe it to the left and reset it. And there you go. You'll then end up with your brush back to normal. You won't have to worry. Then this layer here with our stars, swipe it to the left and duplicate it. Grab your cursor, use uniform, scale it down in size, chuck it up in the top side there. Any angle, doesn't really matter. And then just duplicate it again. Duplicate, grab your cursor, chuck it over here, duplicate that, chuck it down here, duplicate that, put it in that corner. You can bulk out a section if you really want to. You know, you could make it even smaller again. Now, of course, what you could do is go to your layers and pinch all of your stars together. So I can see they're all pretty much these layers here. And then duplicate that and make that even smaller again. And you can create some fantastic amount of sort of small detail in your sky and your space scene. So we'll leave it like that for the moment so that we've got a good solid amount. We can always come back to it, of course. We're going to move on to our planet. So we're going to go ahead and collapse the background down for a minute. We'll go to this circle here at the top and we'll create a new layer and tap on it and clipping mask it to it. We'll go to our colors and we're going to grab the second color. Brush wants to be the option under elements and flames. Now look, if I swipe this to the left, reset is gray, meaning this brush is completely default. A lot of the time when I use this brush, people tell me that they're getting different effects. For example, as well, if I go to my actions, we go to the option of preferences, and we go to pressure and smoothing, I have just a completely default app pressure sensitivity. So what that means is when I add this amount of pressure, I'm adding this amount of color. If you struggle with this and you're quite firm-handed, you may need to, for example, just say, edit this so you can change it and add like a pressure curve. And let's reset that as well. You can tap and drag this to the right, for example, meaning if you add sort of initially just always a quarter amount of pressure by default, you can just adjust that so that your pressure moves to the right hand side. So once you start to press firmer is when you can add those additions. But I'm going to reset it because that's how I like to work with it. The brush size is set to a maximum size of 100%. And what we're going to try and do is we're going to try and create like curved shapes, almost a bit like a marble. So let's go ahead and, for example, round the center here, just kind of draw in a line. And then at the top here, you want to kind of create like a circle kind of shape. And then from there, we just first of all want to create sort of guidelines for ourselves. So they don't have to be straight because, of course, all of these sort of solar flares, etc., won't be. But if you can just try and get yourself some guidelines in there, this is what you're going to need then to build up on top of. Now, a couple of things I want you to bear in mind. I don't want you to go right to the edge every single time and add in white elements like this, which are quite firm to add in. I want you to take your time, first of all, just to build up all of these kind of wiggly lines. And I want you to wiggle your pen. I want you to have them be nice and wobbly. And we want to show just an absolute chaos of fire here on our sun. I'm going to call it a sun because that's what I'm imagining it is for today. And so all these spiral, the flow, maybe there is wind on this sun. So you're seeing the flow of how all that solar is just running round all the way around the outside of our sun. So I'm pressing extremely lightly. I'm just easing my way onto the screen ever so slightly, and then just allowing that just to curve round, creating the kind of flow of everything. And again, I want you to make sure they're nice and wiggly and wobbly at the same time. And then there's a couple of things we do want to make nice and bright on the very edge, and we'll build up to that. But you want to kind of add in whatever elements you make really bright on the edge, like here, they're going to really burst like a solar flare. So I don't want you to add in too many, because especially around the edges, you're going to end up overdoing it. So just take your time to build in these little wiggles and flares and just chaos of fire on here. And you can always bring your brush size down if you want to as well. And I'm going to wiggle my pen along here, and I might even start to factor in exactly that. I'm going to go down to a 50% brush size now, add in a nice burst of flame on that side. There we go. And that's going to give me a lovely flare in a minute. So I might even punch that out a little bit more. And then as you're making your way through here, you can wiggle your pen, of course. And occasionally you might go, oh, okay, let's chuck in like there we go. Lovely bit of bright flaring in there. We don't want to do absolutely everywhere. Not at all. But we want to build up. And ultimately, the planet itself is going to end up with tons and tons of these kind of, at least at a minimum level, some wiggles and wobbles all over the place. Now, sometimes I'm not too fussed if it does chuck itself in pretty heavily. I don't mind that too much. It's still going to sort of work out in the end to a degree. So I'm going to wiggle a little bit of flare at the top there. And most definitely, I want like a wiggle of flare almost up in this top left. So I'm literally going to go round the edge of the sun instead, and then try and add in some additional lines just to kind of curve it back into the rest of the body of the shape here, the sphere. Gonna add in some more. You can go even smaller with your brush size if you feel like you can be a bit more particular with it. Gonna curve some lines over the top. All in all, it's going to slowly start to build up with the chaos, and you can go back up to 100% and just create lines that are going in all sorts of angles. Honestly, you can simply just like go mental. Like, look at that. I'm just squiggling all over the place to fill in this whole scene here. And it is going to end up with quite a lot of kind of orange to it. So you are aiming for that. That's going to be our goal almost. And we're slowly getting there. I'm almost close to being at a point where I'm happy to potentially move on to the next phase. It's just building it up, giving ourselves some nice elements here shortly that we can build up off of. So I'm going to chuck in like a big flare there, a little bit of color. I'm going to create like another one running around here. So I'm starting to be a bit more sort of bold with the pressure now, especially. I'll add in like a little bit over here. a little bit towards the bottom. Maybe we'll keep the bottom a little bit darker, like in this kind of bottom right corner, just to add in what ultimately would look like a bit of shading, but it's not intended to be. And you can go down to about 20 if you really want to, and again, be very, very detailed with your flaring and stuff. We've got loads of effects to kind of add on top of this anyway, so some of this might get lost. So don't stress over it, sort of detailing to a degree. Now at this stage, I'm just going to go ahead and go back to 100%. I'm going to wiggle my brush really fast all over it, just creating a little bit more volume to it and a little bit more chaos. And that looks pretty good. I'm pretty happy with that sort of effect and how it's looking. That's something you should try and aim for. From here, we're going to go ahead and add in the rest of the effects. Now, tell a lie, I'm just going to go ahead and just add in a bit more of a whiter spot up in that. There we go. A little bit brighter in this top corner there. And it's not a corner, but you know what I mean. So then what we want to do is we want to go to this layer that we were just drawing on and swipe it to the left and duplicate it. You then want to go ahead and go to your adjustments. We want to go to the option of perspective blur. It will put a dot in the center of the screen, and we're already aligned to the center of the screen anyway. So we can swipe from left to right and add in a 100% perspective blur. Now that looks a bit mental at the minute, but if you go ahead and tap on this and change its blend mode to lighten, it should have then made your planet look like it's got a little bit kind of a glowy kind of nature to it. Then the next step is to go ahead and go down to the layer that you had before and swipe it to the left and duplicate it. So you've got two of them now. It will really punch out the color. And this top one out the two, we're going to liquefy now and have even more fun. So we're going to go to our adjustments and liquefy. And we're going to use a combination of twirl right. We're going to use crystals. We're going to use all of them. Now, just take a look at my settings there across the bottom and kind of match up accordingly. I'm going to fluctuate my brush from time to time. And because we've got the original lines underneath, what we're creating now, we're going to almost look like a layer on top of the base fire on this kind of sun. So what we're creating now kind of looks like it floats across the top, almost like fiery clouds on the top here. And we want to make sure we use the crystals one as well, just to really push and show these kind of boom, these flares just exploding, especially in the brighter section. So where you've got like a really bright section, I urge you to really kind of try to make them explode like this, where you can get them just really looking like they've kind of exploded off of the surface of the sun itself, and just create a lovely effect. And once you do that, you can then revert back to twirl and twirl left, either, and make your brush size maybe a bit smaller and just twirl them ever so slightly as well. Just a little tap. That's all I'm doing, just giving it a little tap here and there to create some more interesting effects in here. And you can just keep going and have so much fun and create a fiery kind of effect to it, which I think looks so cool. You can then also go ahead and use the option, where is it? It's pinch as well. So you can use size, and you can sort of scale smaller areas down a little bit. So where they've got less of the big flares, you can maybe sort of condense that down, creating a little bit more of a granular detail to it. And then you can kind of go backwards and forwards. You can go from there and then say, actually, we'll then crystallize that again. And now it's smaller. You'll end up with quite fine levels of that crystal effect. There's loads you can just keep doing. You can make brush size really big, create some interesting, huge spikes out from here. Look at that, bang. And if I tap and push, especially with the fact I've got momentum turned on as well, if I push in the direction sort of outwards from the center, I can create some fantastic explosive kind of looks to it. And we're going to keep looking to like pinch some of the bright spots together still though. You can pinch them together to create quite nice fine detail. Like that's quite a large area here, so I'm going to try and pinch it. And by doing that, you may also accidentally, but at the same time, create these kind of what looks like an explosion and a flare from here. So by doing that, I'm just finding little areas, and then it looks like boom, 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 and it's all flying out from a particular point, and it gives us a bit more interest potentially. And then I'm just going to keep going backwards and forwards. So you can spend as long as you like. And by the way, while I've got you for just a second on something that's a little bit kind of easy to do, make sure you subscribe to the channel. I know so many people watch these videos, I can see it in my analytics, that are not subscribed to the channel. It'd be greatly appreciative if you could support me and the work that I do here. And by the way, I've got loads of space theme tutorials here on YouTube if you're interested in any more of them. I've created space tutorials every single year on my channel, so they're very fun for me to create. Now I'm going to try and just add in the tiniest amount of little tap there. I don't want to curve that too much. On the ends, maybe just a tad. That looks quite cool. Now, I'm really happy with how that looks. I think that looks pretty ace. So I'm going to go ahead and tap on my adjustments when I'm done. What we're then going to go ahead and do is go to our layer. We want the bottom one again, swipe it to the left again and duplicate it, but drag it underneath your planet so it sits underneath. Now you may get a little bit of excess that runs out the edges there. You may need to grab your eraser and use the soft airbrush, for example, and just kind of tidy up anything that got a little bit too far away from the sun. So with the soft airbrush, you can nicely kind of fade that in, although an occasional little bit that's a little bit more wild is still not a problem. So from there, we want to go to our adjustments, perspective blur again, and just drag from left to right and create that massive effect again. And then we're going to do it again, adjustments, perspective blur, boom, we're going to go again. And then potentially we could go one more time as well to create just massive amounts of kind of flaring from our planet. Another layer we want to go ahead and create is if we go to our layers and we go to the actual dark circle, swipe it to the left and duplicate it. The bottom one out the two. Just then go ahead and go to your colors and you'll notice this fifth color here now in the palette, and drag and drop it into the center there of your circle. Then drag it underneath the flared version that we just created. Set your blend mode from normal to the option of add, and then go to your adjustments again, Gaussian blur, and then this one wants to definitely be less than what we created the last time. Now, the last time we went all the way up to like 30%, and I want this one to sit a lot closer to the edge as well of the actual sun itself. So I'm going to go up to around about sort of about 13%, I think. And I'm going to grab my cursor as well, use uniform. And because I've got a dark edge down here, I'm just going to grab the bottom right here and push that up so that it stays a bit darker, but we focus still a bit more that glow in the brightest spot towards the top. So I can tap on my cursor there when I'm done. Now, one little part of this that makes this look really effective is if we go to the actual circle here, the dark circle, and we tap on it and we add a mask to it, you'll be on the mask by default and your color should be set to black. Just triple check it is, and set your brush then to the option of airbrushing and the soft brush. Set your size to something about 2%, and where you've got some like bright edges, just lightly, just wiggle your pen there. And what you'll end up doing is you'll end up kind of blurring the lines between what's the edge of the sun here and what's not. So I'm just going to wiggle my pen in certain areas all the way across the sun here, and it will just get rid of that really quite aggressive, almost harsh line of the monoline brush, and it will soften it up is what I mean to say. So in there we can get rid of that kind of real perfect edge to it, really take away a little bit here and there all over the place. You can leave sort of the darker spots if you want to, but you can also soften them up if needs be. And again, look for some of the areas where you've got a flare. If you've got a flare, try and sort of allow that to look like it's coming from on top of the actual sun. So let's just blend it out. Blend out that one there. So it looks like boom, it flies out from that angle. I've got loads of flares up here because I added lots of color towards the edge. So I can just soften them up quite a bit, showing almost their brightness as well at the same time. So that top left area now looks like it completely has been adjusted to accommodate for all this really bright area here. I'll just wiggle my pen along that edge, softening it up where I can. Lovely. And some of those now, as I said, look like they just explode from the center, not so much from but in behind. Now at this stage is where I would go ahead and add in a lot of my adjustments if I had any that I wanted to make. And I do have a few. I want to go into my background, for example. I want to go ahead and that blue layer we initially created, that really light layer, I'm just going to duplicate it because I want to have some emphasis of the blue tones in the sky as well, just a little bit more color. And then I'm going to go ahead and go to this layer here, which is just in behind, and swipe it to the left and duplicate it. And I could leave it exactly like that, but I'm actually going to go ahead and go to my adjustments and Gaussian blur and just spread the color out a little bit wider in the sky. So I'm going to go to 41%. So that should give me now a little bit of extra glow and just spreading across the sky, emphasizing again potentially the brightness of the planet. Another thing you could do is just in front of your add layer here, create another layer and also change it to the option of add. Set your color then to, let's go to this one again, top of the fifth column there. And I'm going to set my soft airbrush, I think, to about sort of 2%. And I could just, where there's a little bit of a brighter spot here, just create like a bit of a glow. Like I could even go like 4% and just push that out from there. Just creating a bit of a emphasis on that kind of drag, especially if there's like a flare above it. I think we can maybe get away with kind of just emphasizing that little bit of brightness and giving ourselves a little bit of kind of bright lighting on the very edge as well, which I think will look quite nice. I'm trying to kind of marry up almost to that little bit of yellow there and then push that a little bit beyond. And then again, I'm just going to keep making my way around now and just seeing if there's any sort of areas where there is a bit of lighting, and I can just emphasize it with a few sort of streaks outwards, much like here too. Definitely here, you know, look how bright that and beautiful that flare is that's coming off. That looks great. A little bit here too. Definitely up in this kind of section here, although I don't want to overdo it because it's already extremely bright. So I'm trying to look for the areas that maybe need a little bit of an additional help almost. Like here, I think we could get away with just a few little pushes above the edge of the surface there. That could go a bit bigger, like 3%, depending on how big the area is that you want to emphasize. And that's just pushing that out. Now, we should end up with much larger little flares here now sticking out. So for example, if I go to my layers and show you, turn it on and off, they've really kind of just punched out completely on those edges, giving us a lot more vibrancy. I'm going to keep going with I'm going to make my way down here as well. Keep going, add in a bit more on there too. And we could always, I think in a minute, use the same perspective blur if we needed to, just to kind of push things and make sure it's nice and kind of angled outwards, potentially. It's just an option. Constantly looking for things that I can tweak. We could also make some adjustments, to be honest, on top as well. But what I'll do is I'll just triple check. If we go to our adjustments and we go to perspective blur, start from left to right, and that will just push. You can see them literally move, can't you? Left to right there. Now, I don't want to do it a lot, but just a tiny bit will just help emphasize them a little bit. I want them to be a little bit brighter towards the edge of the planet anyway. So I've gone up to about 20%. That just helps that little effect. And then I think now it's just a matter of maybe going into the background, and where I've got like an add layer, I think we'll go to the first add layer. I can just go to my colors and work in a few more of these, like the purple. I could set my brush to the soft airbrush, to be fair, just to start off with that, and maybe just wiggle it through there nice and randomly, nice and light with my pressure as well. Just trying to see if I can add some more interest to the sky in the back there. Leave some areas blue, you know, go blue and purple. I'll go to the top now, wiggle in some more color. And these are just, again, I always try to I like to keep in my final adjustments, because they're things that maybe you could look for in your own work that would, you know, maybe it's missing that potentially, but also see what I look for. And then again, I'll go ahead and go up a layer to the other add layer. Let's grab that light blue at the bottom of that column and just see if we can wiggle through here, soften up some of that little cosmos kind of Milky Way looking area down here, giving it a bit more of a glow. Then little random patches just throughout the whole of the background. Nice and soft, super, super soft on my pressure. There we go. Add in a bit more variety to the scene. And you could always make something pretty garish and make something quite large if you really want to. It might add something, it might not. Don't be offended if it doesn't work out. You know, I'm lightly now just adding in a bit more color in this top left area, just to see if I can kind of blend it in behind our sun and add in ultimately what looks like a bit more of a nice bluish tone towards the top there. That last stroke was too much. I definitely know that. And there we go. I'm pretty much done. So I'm going to pinch with 2 fingers, go full screen with 4, and we end up with today's finished design. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope yours looks absolutely fantastic. Make sure to tag me in it over on Instagram and Facebook. I do have a Facebook group that you can join as well. Subscribe for weekly Procreate tutorials, but if you want even more tutorials from me, you can come and join me over on Patreon, because that's where I post 3 exclusives every single month to my Patreon supporters, and the catalogue sits at well over 140 exclusive tutorials at the time of recording, and you can only get access to them if you become a patron. And as I mentioned, if you enjoyed that tutorial here on YouTube, you'll love this one on the screen now. Thank you so much for watching. Have a wonderful rest of your day, and I'll see you in the next one.